Hello and welcome back to the Content Collective's Derailed series. This week I am talking with Aneela Mckenna. Aneela is a mountain bike guide. She's a founder of Mhor Diversity. She does a lot of work trying to make mountain biking a more diverse community, trying to get more women riding. And that was largely the subject of our conversation in this episode. We talk about a lot about Aneela's life, how she got into riding, some of the challenges she's faced in her life, and then we talk about diversity in our community, in the community of mountain biking. It was a really great conversation. We have so much respect for Aneela. She's a lot of fun. She does a lot of just amazing work for others, and I really enjoyed talking to her on this day. It's a fairly it's a topic that people don't want to discuss, or can at times be quite controversial. And regardless of what your opinion is on the sort of politics around diversity, I think we can all agree that we want our sport of mountain biking to be as diverse a place as possible, and people like Aneela are doing amazing work to make that possible. She runs a group called the F&Y Collective, which gets more. It's women-only riding groups to encourage more women into the sport, and these have been actually very successful. There are more women mountain biking now, so it's just part of the answer. It's part of a very complicated picture, but these type of initiatives, the initiatives that Aneela is a part of, can be successful. So. And that's a good thing. So, enjoy the conversation. Please listen to it. I think it's a really great one. And it's a really important one. I'm glad we had the conversation with her. I'm glad we're talking about it. And, we do really want this community we want as many people to enjoy the sport that we love as possible. And conversations like this, we hope, are part of making that possible. So, without further ado, here is Aneela Mckenna. Enjoy.
All right.
Take four.
Okay, so Aneela, we want to talk about racism in sport and diversity in our sport of mountain biking, and maybe more generally the outdoors, but also just, we'll touch on broader topics obviously as well. So I thought it'd be a good place to start with just talking a little bit about your background and how you got into mountain biking.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me and talking about this stuff. It's it's good
important.
It's important, and it's great you guys are taking that step to do it. So awesome. Yeah. So how did I get into mountain biking? Good question. It wasn't really something I knew about as a kid. I wasn't really into sport, to be honest. It wasn't something I was encouraged to do, and it was only in my 20s when I really got into it.
Yeah.
And it was because of a white boy that was chasing me to go on a date with him, and somehow he managed to convince me to go on a date.
Yeah.
On a mountain bike ride.
Oh really? Was that your first date?
Yeah, it was.
No way, really?
Well, yeah, kind of first official date.
Funny.
He was a BMXer when I was a kid. So,
yeah.
And so he just kind of took me on this ride, and I really didn't know what to expect, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I just remember that sort of feeling of fear at the end of it, and thinking, God, I survived it. And I think that's something that really, that's something that's really stuck with me, is that fear, but actually what you get from that fear, and what it does to you in such a way that you've conquered something.
Absolutely, yeah.
And
it almost like
you kind of get hungry for more.
Exactly, yeah. By having sort of actual real moments of fear, you have less of it to deal with when you're, the rest of your life, when you shouldn't really be sort of scared about stuff like that.
Yeah, and they say that, overcoming fear and actually, turning that into courage as well, and how can be really good for for your everyday life and the things that you do. So mountain biking connects to everything, not just about the ride itself and the bike, but every part of what makes you and how you get on in life. So that's why it's really important to me, and from that made a ton of friendships, and people are incredible in the sport. So I can't ask for anything better, really.
That is the thing I was saying to you on the last climb up, that the
take one or take two, was that?
in the rehearsal, that for me, getting into kind of struggling a little bit in primary school and not really fitting in and things and not having much confidence, and getting into mountain biking gave me everything. It gave me friends and confidence, and that doesn't just stay in mountain biking. It travels to every other kind of part of your life, and that's the real amazing power in sport. And that's why we want to get as many people, not necessarily just into mountain biking, but just the power of outdoor sport is it's so it's nourishing. It's good for you.
Yeah, can't hear you very well.
Yeah, you might want to slow down, Christo.
You must be going really fast.
We can't hear anything. Maybe a
It's
little
a
bit more.
windy day.
Just so you can hear us talk. You should be able to hear us talk, I think.
Yeah, that's better. You might
Yeah.
have to repeat you were talking about your childhood and
Yeah, so I was just saying that
how important it is to
how
you.
important it is. You were saying it doesn't just, the confidence you learn from dealing with the fears in this kind of arena, in these forests and whatever, travels to other parts of your life. For me, like when I got into mountain biking and racing and I was training and stuff, that changed my life in a profoundly positive way.
Yeah.
And then it's continued to keep me, when things are hard, it's just there for you, and it's just like a rock that you can like rely on.
Yeah.
And that's why we kind of want to get as many people finding their thing, their kind of healthy thing outdoors as possible, because we those of us who've done it and got into it understand the power of it.
Yeah, and we're privileged, aren't we, because we're in the sport already.
Exactly.
And it is about actually those that don't have that privilege. What can we do about it? What can we get more people into the sport and enjoy the benefits that we get from it? So, and that's really what I've been working. That's what my passion has been all my life, and I suppose it's because my upbringing defines who I am and what my career is and what I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
And, I did have a difficult upbringing. I had a very strict Pakistani father who was abusive, and he, led me to a place. He's not there anymore. My mother's not around anymore, but it led me to a place that, I want to do something with my life, and not for me that I had to sort of deal with that oppression and that kind of control in life.
Yeah.
It's made me want to give more to others and actually make sure that others can have a good life too.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what's really driven me, and I've got the opportunity to do that in the sport I love as well. So
absolutely. You mentioned something actually that was quite, I suppose, touching in that podcast you did on Braw and the Brave, which was, you said, your mum didn't have a great life, and part of your drive is to like have as good a life as you can for your mum.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's my connection with her. And she did die early, and I do blame my father. He did die of COVID last year.
Oh, really?
I hadn't seen him for 20 years, and it was a good closure, a good chapter for me to sort of close. But I think that connection with my mum is what keeps me going in such a way that I want to do good things in life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's just like one part of my life, but there's also my experience of being different at school, and I'm
just going to put this down again.
Kind of conversation's going a different way now.
Yeah.
Always does,
It's actually better usually when we've done them twice before. They've always been better.
The second time.
Yeah,
I'm much more relaxed.
Everyone's more relaxed, and you speak more concisely, and you know.
And then you didn't go straight into the hard stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Like.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's cool. It's cool.
That's good. To me, that's the stuff that's most interesting and most real.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were just chatting, so we've not got a chesty mount today, so we're having to make do with this bag. But you were talking about your mum and wanting to sort of have as good a life as you can in I don't know, service to her or something.
Yeah, and you've got to remember, like, you know, it was that time when, you know, racism was quite explicit in those days, and it was quite a struggle to integrate.
Yeah.
In the sort of 80s, and I think my mother really struggled with that. She was really isolated as a result of, you know, the abuse.
Yeah.
But so, you know, the services weren't there for her. The community wasn't really there for her. But, you know, so it was a kind of difficult period, and experiencing that at that time was very different to what racism is like today.
Yeah.
Then it was, you know, you'd get called things in the street. You'd see the graffiti in your street on the walls. It was like really common getting called names, and you know, that doesn't happen as much now. It's very different.
Yeah.
It's much more implicit and very subtle, but it's still there. You know. It still exists.
Exactly, yeah, and it's there in ways that are obvious. It's obvious that the outdoor sports are dominated by white males. It's changing.
Yeah.
It's obvious that a lot of things, I think people maybe think they don't hear like those racist words anymore as much.
Yeah.
And they don't. They think of racism as being just this, like, it's calling someone a name, or it's not allowing someone into a restaurant because of the colour of their skin, or not actually allowing someone into a place, but they don't necessarily think of it as, you know, these more nuanced and subtle kind of exclusions and things.
Yeah.
How do you think racism has changed in the last sort of 30 years, like since you were a child to today?
I mean, obviously I've been in different environments, from education going into employment, and so different experiences, but I would definitely say, you know, that explicit, you know, well, you know, don't like you, or because you're a different colour, that doesn't really happen anymore, but it's the kind of subtle conversations that you have with people, that you know that there's a questioning about you, or there's this notion of you being something different that you always have to kind of fight against.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's like that with everybody, just saying that can happen, and it can happen frequently. But it's not just about individual behaviour as well, it's about society, because if you think about it, society is an unequal place.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of class,
yeah.
You've got, you know, poverty, you know, wealth, your ethnicity, your gender, disability. There is inequality in society, and mountain biking is not immune.
Yeah, of course.
You know, we like to say, well, we treat everybody the same, we're all welcome. Of course we are all welcome, but the fact is that the space there's not that diversity in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we need to ask the questions, what can we do about it?
Yeah, exactly.
What can we do to change it? Because it's not going to happen, you know, it's not going to just happen.
Yeah.
It's got to be a conscious effort from people that work in the industry.
Absolutely.
People who are the decision makers, to say, okay, this is a predominantly male sport, so how can we break that down? What are the problems for women getting into the sport?
Yeah.
What are the problems for people of colour? How can I make the trails more accessible to people, you know, who can't afford to get out into the countryside?
Yeah.
You know, what are the options? So it's just trying to look at things a little bit differently.
I think that's an important point as well, that the fact that, like, any one inequality is kind of layered on top of a whole range of possible other inequalities, and you know, we're all, your skin color
Yep.
or your gender is
Yep.
just one, you know, aspect of
Yep.
this massively complex thing that we all are. And if there is a privilege to being, well, the privilege of being a white male like myself, is that if I want to get into a sport, or I suppose, I mean, you could say if something like the sports out there that maybe are like ballet or something, there's a sort of
Yeah.
inverted, well, not,
Yeah,
it's not an
no,
inverted
yeah, I see what
sexism,
you
but
mean, yeah.
I loved ballet when I was in nursery,
Yeah.
and it would have been something that I probably would have pursued, and would have been something that was probably really good for me. The
Yeah.
teacher there was like, this is maybe a bit of a tangent, but it's quite interesting because
No, it's not.
there's lots of different things going on always. The teacher was like, I loved it, and she was like, Morgan should take ballet classes. But at the time it was just a joke that I would do ballet classes.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it was like something, you know, it almost felt like something I was being teased
Yeah.
for liking this thing, so it was never even a thing. And if I had done it, it would have been really tricky. Like high school, like that would have just been something that
Yeah.
I would have for sure would have just been ammunition, to, you
Yeah.
know, for people to
To mock you.
me
yeah.
about. But as an adult, it's like I would have loved dance and ballet.
Yeah,
Like I would have
yeah.
absolutely loved it. And so it's not just wherever there's a community or a sport. I suppose I'm talking about sort of privilege, and certainly in a sport like the outdoors, like I don't have to worry, like, you know, if I want to meet people to go riding with or something,
Yeah.
I don't have that
Yeah, yeah.
particular isolation or potential isolation to consider. It's not, you
Yeah.
know,
It's almost like you have to fit a stereotype, or, you know, even if you're talking about ballet, it's like, you know, we have these kind of defined social norms of what we're expected to do. So boys do this, girls do that. And so that then defines us in terms of what we're capable, what we're good at as we progress in life.
yeah, exactly.
And, you know, so maybe my level of risk might be different to your level of risk, or, you know, and so something like mountain biking might not be seen as a sport for you, you know, because it's seen as something quite out there and quite hard to get to that level that it's accessible to you, when in fact it can be accessible to anyone. We all started from somewhere, didn't we?
Exactly, yeah. And having that, I suppose we're talking a little bit about racism, which is like one inequality that people deal with, and your kind of journey of getting into, or we're talking a little bit about how racism has changed and like what racism looks like today as opposed to when you were growing up.
Yeah.
And you were saying it's more subtle now.
Yeah.
Subtle kind of exclusions and
Yeah, I think people don't, you know, people realise that it's, you know, think, well, we are welcome to everybody. You know, what's the problem? There is no racism in Scotland. But how can you say that when you haven't had that lived experience?
yeah,
You know, yes, we are all come from different backgrounds. You know, we some of us have privileges. I don't mean privileges as in wealth, as in, you know, some of us,
just slow down a little bit, Krista.
you know, some of us have had those opportunities to access things that others haven't.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I find it hard when people tell me that there is no racism.
Is that something as well, like that's a continual challenge you deal with
It's
a
a
lot?
continual challenge, and it's almost like you have to justify its existence.
Yeah,
When, if you speak to people of colour and they talk about their barriers and their own experiences, that, you know, when somebody else tells you that you don't, then, you know,
it's discounting of your
it's discounting of your you know, of what you feel and
yeah.
what's happening to you in life and what's, you know, your position in life. So it's almost like, what's the weird word? It's almost like sort of belittling it, you know, by saying it doesn't exist. But so you can't judge if you don't have that lived experience yourself. That's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say. And listen to people and listen to what they have to say
Yeah,
before making an assumption that, you know, that everything's great and we don't have a problem in Scotland. We do have a problem in Scotland. Look, we've talked about, if you look at mountain bike, leaders, guides, coaches, the industry, people around the table making decisions. We have to look at, well, who are they? What do they look like?
Yeah.
How can we have those diverse voices there? Because when you have that diverse voice, then you start to mix it up a bit.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. So Danny Milner from MBR has been doing some really good work recently, and he did take a really bold and brave step and put in a really significant article that was written by Julia Hobson about diversity, inclusion, and myself, and what I'm doing, what others are doing to change things, and it was really very well received.
Yeah.
And taking that step means he's, MBR saying, look, we want to be different, and this is just the beginning. So here we're having the conversation. So let's take action. Let's do something about it. And then their most recent magazine was a women's only edition, and some people might think, oh, why was it only women's only? We're still having that debate today.
Yeah.
But at least it might increase the readership because you're connecting to different communities. And having me on the front cover that day, and it was almost like, it was again a brave step, but it meant that people in my networks, my community, my ethnic minority community, could see and could connect with what is mountain biking. So there you go. There opens a whole new world, and people of colour, for the first time, friends of mine went out and bought the magazine. So it's about behavioural change. It's about taking those small steps that, opens it up.
And so do you think that's one of the biggest changes that we're having, like, since you were young, when racism was more obvious? But even in those days, I told you I was reading this book by Michael Fuller, who's the first black chief constable, and people didn't consider, like, what was interesting about that book is people were saying awful words, like, words that people would not say now, like the most taboo words, and they were saying them like they were jokes. And where he was quite interesting is he was still friends with those people, and he saw that they were good people. They were just like, well, they were because they would do decent things for him and things, but they just didn't consider like how hurtful. They kept on saying, oh, you're being sensitive, or whatever, and so they put the problem onto him. But now people don't experience that so much, but a lot of the attitudes and stuff are still there, and then the feeling is still there. So one of the biggest changes maybe is the fact that we're now actually having the conversation. And if you think about, we have never had the conversation about it in mountain biking. This is only in the last year. I mean, we're in the 21st century, so we're in a good place. We're going in the right direction. It just means that we all have to, take a bit of responsibility for it. And I'm not saying every rider has to take the responsibility for it, but it's almost like the industry, nationally, there's standards set that set a positive, future for next generations to come. So what then, at the moment, is being done to tackle racism in sport? And what more can be done? What I'm finding interesting is, we've talked about that open conversation, but that kind of trickle down effect where, so British Cycling have set out an inclusion strategy and how they want to diversify its membership. It's athletes, it's volunteers, it's leaders, guides, in such a way that that will then start to trickle down, won't it, to the clubs. Exactly,
and they'll have to set out and define, well, what are you doing to open up your space? How are you making it feel inclusive? How are you being proactive about it?
That's another interesting point as well, is I think people, it's not just about, you could think like, for myself, like, well, I'm not prejudiced against people that don't look like me or people from different colours. Although we're all fearful of the unknown in some ways, or whatever.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And we all naturally, like, we've got to check, judgments. Like, if you see someone that looks a certain way, like, someone that looks like wearing a track, like you're in a certain area or something you're scared of, or something, that you do make judgments based on different people. So we have to be aware of those and like check them.
Yep.
And then also in sport, it's like we actually have to go out of our way to. It's like if you were in a party or something, and you're with your group of friends, and someone new comes into the party. It's not good enough to just not vilify the new person that comes into the party. You have to make them feel like they're welcome and actually included, like proactively include them into what's going on.
I think that does too, like in mountain biking that does happen. I think it is very warm. I don't like to blame it's not about the people, because that's the whole point. It's such an incredible place that you want to share that. But it's more the kind of systemic issues. It's like, well, it's not about the actions of individuals, but it's the actions of, getting people to appreciate what it means. The clubs looking at, okay, what does my membership look like? What might I need to do differently? How can I engage with the local ethnic minority community? Just little steps that might allow you to just be that little bit more sensitive to it. And rather than not thinking about it at all. If you don't think about it at all, then it'll just remain as is. And I don't think the majority of us want that. There is a real desire to make this open and enjoyed by all, because we have so many good things that come from it in terms of our mental health, in terms of our approach to life, our resilience. It's quite a unique sport in that way. Absolutely. It gives you so much. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm just biased because I'm a mountain biker.
I think, if you compare it to something like swimming growing up, like sport I think is generally good for people. But swimmers, when they stop competing, they're not left with like a community as much and a culture and a lifestyle. Whereas mountain biking, like for me at the start, it was a lot about racing. And now it's like, I stopped racing and that was kind of challenging itself, but I've got friends and a thing to do at the weekends, and every time you come out, it's not just a fun thing to do, it's so much more than that. It's something that will save, like in my own experience, it's something that gave me so much confidence, that helped me so much as a adolescent, as a child, and it's something that kind of saved me in many ways as in my early 20s, kind of struggling with different things. Like, it's not just this thrilling thing to go and do, it's something, the power of it is immense.
It is immense, and it's a way of, if you think about well-being, and I talk about well-being a lot in the sense that there's different aspects to it, isn't it? There's a physical, social, emotional well-being, and it gives you all of that, and your mental well-being, which she talks about there. So it's a win-win situation to, for all of us. And if you actually have that diversity as well of voices, then potentially that it makes it more enriching for everyone else as well.
Absolutely, and I think,
and you learn about other things, you learn about other people's experiences, and then you as a human makes you much more rounded.
Totally,
you know.
I don't think anyone really. I mean, no one wants to live in a world that is segregated by race and colour. I think for a lot of probably like a lot of white people more, or if just the members of the majority race, within any country, it's like they feel guilty. There's like they don't want to talk about it because it makes them maybe feel guilty in a way that, and so they'd rather pretend like it's not an issue or whatever. But I think those people and everyone would much rather be going out for a ride, and you're seeing lots of different types of faces and guys and girls, and like you don't feel like this is just
Yeah.
some privilege for
Yeah.
your particular group.
Yeah.
It's something that is enjoyed by everyone.
Yeah. I think you're bang on there what you say about the fear and kind of opening up about it. Sometimes that's what we're comfortable with when things are sensitive or we don't really understand them, because we don't understand them from our own knowledge, our own influences, what's around us. We can only know from what's around us, don't we? Through our family, our upbringing, what we're influenced by. So we need to kind of remove ourselves from that sometimes and just be a bit more open-minded.
And talking about sort of fear, I'd imagine there's a fear on, for the sort of majority group. There's a fear for like white people like me having these conversations about race for one reason or another. And then I'd also imagine there's a big fear from yourself when you feel like it's like, I don't know, I mean, I can't, like, what is there a fear in having the conversation?
No.
For you, not so much?
No, I just don't want to have it continuously.
Yeah.
It needs to be other voices as well.
And so how?
And so, as I said, like, there's, I might be one person in this small kind of, thing that's trying to push all of this, but there's loads happening, and it's about, we talked about British cycling, and so I'm on their diversity and inclusion advisory board, and so I've got a real opportunity to influence and help shape what that looks like, and obviously look after the mountain bikers as well. Because I know that mountain biking hasn't really had as much of the limelight in terms of sort of the national strategy, but I know that they are tackling that, and it's just all of us working together, and then it doesn't tire you out, and then again,
Absolutely.
I'm not the one that has to kind of
You don't need to
justify
be
the
talking
need
about it
for it all the time. Yeah, I'm going to get to a point where we're just talking about, well, what can we do? But I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah.
There's still this uncertainty about, well, why do we have to do it? And I think for me, it's like, well, I just want you to normalise it and embed it in the way you think.
Yeah.
That's it. Think about people beyond yourself. And
So you're saying there's two conversations that you're needing to have at the moment. The first is you need to justify to people that this is a real problem that needs.
I don't feel I should have to justify it. I don't want to feel like I have to justify it, because that puts a lot of pressure on me to do that, and people of colour to do that. And it shouldn't only be people of colour that are talking about this, because they are, and also, we're the ones that are not got the voices around the table. So yes, if we've got an in, then great, but other people have to get on board too, and that's what I talk about privilege. Privilege can be used in a really empowering way as well, is using your privilege to help those that are, don't have the opportunities, or are not participating, or are not in the space. Use that privilege to change it.
And how important then, in terms of things that we can do, things that people like me can do, or people like us, who are, members of the kind of dominant group in this community, and don't have to think about those particular types of exclusions, like what?
Well, you guys have an influential role because of what you do. You're out there, you're telling stories, and through storytelling we can actually transform behaviours, and we can all do that. Storytelling is such a powerful part of the mountain bike world, isn't it?
Absolutely, I think
we don't just sell product or bikes.
Exactly.
It's all about what comes with it as well. Obviously the bikes are important.
The human experience is everything we do is we sort of structure things in stories, and
and so storytelling, it's like you can hear these different voices, and then hopefully that will encourage others to think that, okay, I can see somebody like myself.
Yeah.
So maybe this is something I could find out about. Maybe, there's a role model for me, or there's somebody that actually can do this, so I can do it. And that's how change happens. We've seen that in mountain biking in terms of gender, and
absolutely.
Slowly,
we know that change can happen. There's definitely
we've seen the change happen. I think.
Exactly.
And the thing is that we've worked hard to get more women represented you know, in all spheres of mountain biking. It's not there yet. I think there's still a significantly low number of mountain bike guides and leaders, but it's given us permission to talk about other inequalities as well.
Yeah.
And it's opened up that space to do it. Obviously Black Lives Matter had an impact as well last year. And I mean, we saw some of the horrible comments that came out as a result of that, from like people putting up really nice supportive posts. And my pal Aoife, who's a freelance journalist, and she put up a post, and the amount of abuse she got for being a white woman talking about race.
And so her abuse was that it's not her place to talk about it?
Yeah.
Is that the abuse?
Yeah, but she did have her own lived experience.
Yeah.
So why shouldn't she talk about it?
The fear for white people, or it's the same with anything, like and part of it is good that like yourself, who has these experiences and has gotten into the sport, and like you can talk from a place of like personal kind of experience, which is kind of it adds a certain legitimacy,
a reality to it.
Exactly, yeah. And then there's a fear of, you know, talking about like any of these things you haven't directly got experience enough, one way or the other. There's a fear that you could be called, well, what do you know about this? Like you've not, and that is like, it can't be that way because there's not enough. You know, like in Scotland, it's like 87% of the population, something like that, is white. So it's not. Yeah. It has to be that people who have not directly experienced these things talk about them. Otherwise, like it's the only way that we can get enough people talking about them.
Yeah, and only 1% access the national parks.
Is that right?
Of people of colour.
Really?
So you know, there's your story there as well. You know, but going back to that fear, you're right. But it's about taking bold and brave steps, isn't it? Yeah, it's almost like with any struggle. We saw it with the change in women's participation. We got absolutely slammed for like having women-only spaces and, you know, getting mocked for it. And I remember there was even an article about let's have men's bikes and men's races, and it was just mocking the whole thing. And it was really sad because all we were trying to do is create equality, you know, and just bring women, 50% of the population, bring them into something to enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got totally slammed for that then, I remember. So it's almost like you have to go through that struggle to get to a point of acceptance.
Totally.
You
and
know?
That's one of the most important
things.
And
that's what we're going through right now. We're going through that struggle of that conversation. I'm hopeful that we get to a point where it just becomes normal.
It becomes normal. And to make it normal, we have to do these proactive things like women-only groups and whatever, because it's not enough like to feel. I know, like with like my girlfriend started getting into sports and things, and even just gyms is like it's not a place that she wants to go. It's like to a gym or whatever. So having like a women-only space, like it encourages those people there, and then they can see that this is fun. I enjoy this, and then it's like from there maybe we can have these. You can't just say, oh, they should just join our thing. It's fine, but it's like you might not feel like included, or you might not. It's about actually. It's not just about. It's about how do we like encourage people into the sport, and I think like having. Do you think that's something that works well with gender, but would be more complicated with, you know, sort of minority groups?
I think if we just talk about gender there, the interesting thing is, you know, like I'll just give you an example recently, like the space it's important to have a safe space, right? But the whole point of doing this is about integration at the end of the day, because, you know, and it's not about having these exclusive groups. Women should then have a choice and feel empowered and confident to ride well, to ride confidently, to know actually this is great, and then get to meet other mountain bikers. So I'm not saying that, you know,
like
one
a stepping stone
it's
to
like
the
a stepping
integration.
stone, it's to help facilitate that, isn't it? That confidence, and that's what we do with the FNY collective. It's bridging that gap between women that ride the trail centres, and then they have no idea how to come and ride the Golfie.
Yeah.
And they feel quite intimidated about it. I'll give you an example. Actually, 2 weeks ago, and there was 25 women out. We have like an introduction to the Golfie, and there are 25 women out, and there's one girl that was a little bit, you know, she was taking her time coming down. It was like she's only been up here a couple of times, and there was a guy behind her, and he told her to get off the trail while she was on a really steep section of trail, and she said sorry to him, and then she moved away, and she said, oh, I thought it was my friend Claire. And he was like, why would your friend Claire be even anywhere near you? She wouldn't be as fast as me. And it's just like, so that kind of behaviour, I think,
takes one as well to like,
yeah,
if you're like nervous about going into a space, and this happens to, we all know how it feels to be nervous about going into a space.
Yeah.
And then to have, just to be like mocked or to have anything go on while you're a bit nervous is just like destroys your confidence.
Yeah.
Like,
we were out to get him, we had if this is out there, we had a blue 100% t-shirt on, so we still got to find this guy.
Absolutely. If you've seen anyone in a blue 100% t-shirt. So you mentioned,
yeah, but with people of colour, it's just the same. It's the same process.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that could be something that is a good same process as a stepping stone, is having these groups where you show like, look, there's a lot of people of colour that can, like, you can find this community, and then we can integrate, like, find the community within that, a community that knows what it's like to be excluded on the basis of your skin colour, and then they feel kind of included there, and they feel like they can safer in accessing these spaces, and then it's like there's an integration into accessing the spaces.
That's one part of it. One part of it is having that. It's almost using that template around gender. I'm not saying we've sorted it in terms of gender. No way, but we've made progress there. But it is, one aspect is about that safe space. But that's only one. We also need to look at representation in terms of the media. We need to look at our leadership. We need to look at our role models. All of that, we need to set sort of like actions around it. That's not necessarily, it's not just one thing, there's a whole host of things we can do,
And what is being done at every level, so it needs to be done at the sort of grassroots level, and then also at a kind of policy,
leadership level,
at a policy, at a government level.
Absolutely.
And what is being done at the moment at that? Is there much being done? You mentioned this British cycling thing. You mentioned there was a state. I don't know if you mentioned it you mentioned this before the podcast, but there was a recognition from a state organisation that racism does exist in.
I mean, this is big news, and so there's 5 sports councils, including Sport Scotland, have just published a report, and they spoke to people all over the UK, including Scotland, to tell their story about themselves and their access to sport, and talking to people of colour. And the one thing that the finding from it was that racism exists in sport in the UK, and so there's a big piece, at the top here saying we've got a problem. We have to do something about it.
Yeah.
And we have to do something about these bloody midges.
Yeah. Should we? I feel like we should finish this part of the conversation.
Yeah, let's finish.
You want to just finish at that, or do you want to carry on? Because we haven't. That's been an hour.
Oh my God, that's ridiculous.
Oh really? There's just too much to talk about is the problem.
Shit. You will will edit it, will you? Anyway.
We can edit parts of it, yeah. What do you think then, as soon as we've stopped now, what do you want to, we can finish there, or you can ask me a question if you want. Do you feel like we've talked enough about...
Yeah, I want to ask you some questions, that's important. I haven't done that, have I?
We could do that, we could write down and then we could do it at the bottom. Or do you think we should just do it now?
I just want to ask you guys, do you want to just do it now?
Yeah,
let's just get it done.
Let's just deal with these.
So yeah, it's 12:30, right? I mean, I'm curious about why you asked me to do this today. This is, I know that the conversations are being had across the mountain bike community right now. But what were your motivations for doing this?
I think mine was on the International Women's Day podcast. You just struck me as just a very interesting person with quite an interesting story, and a real kind of. I just respect. I have a huge sort of respect for what you're doing in the sport, especially not just around race, but around like getting more girls out mountain biking and stuff. And the reason we want to do it is, if I think about my own story in mountain biking, it's not just that. It's not like there was things that. It's not like you're just a white male, so like this opportunity is available to you. It's like there's also a lot of uncontrollable things that presented. I was like had this mountain bike club that I was very lucky to have in the school. That was exactly that. It gave me a group in the same way. And then there was a state-funded sort of development program that got me into racing and whatever. And so I had these opportunities that weren't as a result of like myself or anything. I mean, certainly it might be as a result of like being male and whatnot, but it wasn't just entirely in my control. And so I know the power basically of having these kinds of initiatives. And I also know the power of the sport. Like we talked about it just on the way up. Like it's been profoundly positive on all of our lives, and you know, we want to have the conversations to get those opportunities for as many people as possible. And if we know that race and gender and these things is a challenge to people and these opportunities, then we know absolutely that we should be doing what we can to kind of have those conversations and include those people into this amazing sport, basically. So I want to do it. So let's get the hell away from these from these bridges. All right, let's do it. This is an Innerleithen classic flat white. Most people will be familiar with this trail, certainly in the valley.
Don't know what line I'm taking.
A little bit. Aneela's taking some Strava lines.
Yeah. I don't even own Strava.
When this trail was first built, it was so smooth, and probably the best trail any of us had ridden, certainly down here. One of the best trails I've probably ever ridden. It still kind of is. It's so fast, big berms, just catch you, but it's gotten so rough over the years.
So loose.
It's such a fun trail though. Now the bit there. There's so many little lines you have to try and remember on this trail. This is looking quite good actually. Seems like they've done a bit of work on it.
They have.
They have.
TVT's been out. They've been really good.
Oh. Still rough though. This bike just feels, the lightness feels so cool. I don't know if it would when it was like, if you were on something really fast and rough.
You can talk too much.
Ah, good to get away from those midges.
It's much better now. Getting some movement. Those midges are nasty.
They've been bad this year.
You always say they don't exist in the borders, but they do.
Yeah.
So the TVTA has been doing some fantastic work on this.
Yeah. It looks brilliant.
You'll just see some of the turns here which they've been working on.
Oh really?
Yeah. I'm so lucky to have the TVTA.
Absolutely.
I'm proud to be part of it.
I know there's so much happens on these trails.
Yeah.
There's so much work that goes into us having a lot of fun.
Yeah. If it wasn't for these guys, we wouldn't be enjoying the trails like we do now.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh. Thank you.
So I just want to thank you so much for coming on our podcast, being a part of it. I hope that we've only just scratched the surface really with a lot of these topics, and they're so complex and there's so much to cover. But I hope that we covered some of it at least. And certainly it was great to hear from you, and all the work you're doing is really making a difference, I'm sure, for a lot of young girls, a lot of young people, and there's a lot to be done more to just make the sport more diverse. But thank you so much for coming on the show.
All right, I really hope you enjoyed the episode with Aneela Mckenna. I really enjoyed talking to her. If you did, please, this is part of my thing, is to like, comment, and subscribe. Just, whatever. Enjoy the video. We've got another one coming. I think we've got some more coming. Yeah, we've got another one coming next week. And then at some point we're going to be rounding off season 2, but I'll let you know when that happens. Otherwise, see you next week. Thanks for watching. That's an important point. Always good to thank people for spending time watching our videos. Thanks. See you later.
Bye.